Lens flare. Lightning. Badass.
Hi, I'm Brian. Today I'm going to teach you how to make one of these. This is a deck box made out of those instruction packs you get out of a booster. Now, I've seen a lot of people, I'm new to Magic, so I've seen a lot of people with deck boxes and fancy stuff like that. I'm a bit more of a do-it-yourselfer, so I thought, why should I recycle these things when I can find good art and turn it into a deck box, or at least some way for me to separate out decks that I want to play versus the rest of my cards. So I'm going to show you how to do this with absolutely just one of these. So next time you get a booster pack, first and foremost, you want to look at it and find some art that you want to use. So let me reset the camera here and I'll show you how it works. Okay, so first things first, we need to open a booster pack and find the instructions. So this should be pretty straightforward because they're pretty much the only thing that's relatively useless if you know how to play the game. What you want to look for on the instructions is a good piece of art to work with. So you can look here, this piece of art, it looks okay, except if your front of your deck box is around the size of a card, the back is not very interesting. There's some other art here, this isn't very interesting as well. You could make your deck box so the back of it is Liliana Shade, this card that's on here, which would be kind of cool. I've made a box like that already. Let's look on the other side. These pieces of art tend to work just a little bit better. So what we'll do is we'll pick one of these and we'll start making our deck box. So let's start with Jace just because, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to decide whether or not we want the art to be on the front of the deck box or the back. So if you look, there is the place where the flap's going to go in. Okay, so this is the front of the deck box. Some art's going to work well here, and you want to look for on your piece of on your instructions, you want to look for a place where you're going to have a big back flap that you can work from. So if you imagine, what we're going to do is we're going to put this card here and then fold up all these instructions to make the box, and then it has to be able to essentially come around and tuck in. So this is a good spot for us to start, and this is good for to have this on the front. Now we can also have this on the back instead, but it makes it a little bit harder to figure out where to start your box. So let's for now, for this one, let's make his art essentially the same way this art is. So we're essentially going to put him right here, okay? And then the rest of this will come back up and around and turn into a flap. So let's get started. First and foremost, we need to find out the things we're going to need. So we're going to need the instructions, right? Got those. You're going to need a pair of scissors. Okay, these are not kid scissors. This will poke your eye out, kids. So don't hurt yourself with those. If you have some cool scissors like that. And you're going to need tape. Now, Scotch tape might work, but I prefer big ass packing tape because it is going to be a little bit more resistant to water and whatnot. It's also going to prevent you from having to, try and put 5 or 6 layers of tape if you don't want to. On this one, I've got, 3 or 4 pieces of tape, and it's holding the whole thing together. Flaps and all. So here we go. So some other things you might need are some cards that you're not going to use to essentially stiffen up your the sides and the back of the box. Now I'm not going to use these per se. These are our ECM Classics tokens. These you can get when you come to one of our events. But this is the type of card, or the token cards that come in the pack that you may not use. Those would be a good card to use in the front or the back to add some reinforcement here and here, so that the box doesn't have too much flex. I mean, you are making it after paper, or out of paper after all. So, so let's get started. What we need to do first is we need to figure out how big our box is going to be. So I'm going to use a conventional card that does not have a sleeve on it. If you want to make a box that's good for sleeves, you want to use something that's, obviously you just want to use a card in a sleeve, or if you want to get absolutely bonkers about it, you can use the old-fashioned measuring tape. Me, I am a little too impatient for that kind of stuff, so I'm going to just start with a magic card. Now, what you want to do is you roughly want to center that art along a card. So it's real convenient. The card's got these little dots on it. You can use those to help you kind of get a guide. And I believe that the the green and the blue dot on the card are also pretty well centered. So you can use that if you've got a line like this does conveniently right down the middle of his face. You can use that. If you were doing a card, a box that was going to use Chandra, you just eyeball it. So her left eye's kind of in the middle. So you're going to want to line this up with her left eye, basically, or maybe a little bit further left, and just line that up. Okay. And then what you're going to do is you can either mark, or what I do is crease. So I'm going to put this roughly center, okay, and we're going to crease it. So this is just a guide. So we're not going to put really, really thick, heavy creases in right now. We will, but not yet. So we have the left side of the right side of our box, our deck box, and then I'm going to say box a lot in the video, just so you know. And then the left side here. So, so again, we're just getting a guide. So now we're going to take this and we're going to fold this up, okay, to line up with our guide edges, plus however thick we want the box to be. So if you have a standard 60 card box, 60 card deck, basically it'll fit in almost a regular card pack. So you can use a regular pack of cards, or I got one of these promotional Planeswalker decks. Just a regular box of cards will be fine, just for thickness. So you're going to put your a conventional box right where that crease was that you just made, and kind of wrap it around. Okay. And again, you're just making a guide here. You're not trying to get this exactly right. But you'll see here that you've got the beginnings, at least of the dimensions. And that's really all we're after right now, is we're after some basic dimensions. Same thing on the other side. So find your crease mark, which is here. Okay, and then just put another guide right there. Okay? And this will make sure that you have a relatively consistently shaped deck box. Otherwise, you'll have, one side longer than the other side, and that's going to make your dimensions look a little bit cattywampus. It'll still function, but we're going to, without measuring it, we're still going to try and do the best we can. So let's get folding. Big fan of origami, but not necessarily professional. So. Keep your critiques to the comments and keep them pleasant, or I won't be doing more of these. And that is a threat. So here we go. So first we're going to make a fold just on that widest most piece, crease area. And you can make sure that that fold that you're making is straight by lining up the back. Okay? So we're doing that. And we're going to fold that all the way down. Now, I try and use the entire piece of instruction paper, and it's only because I want these things to be stiff and rigid and box. So there we go. So this has got to rip right in a bad spot. So we'll address that with a little bit of tape. All right. So we are just put a tape over that torn edge. It's not really going to matter, I don't think. So that's that. We're going to put, when we get a little further along, we're going to put a piece of tape here anyway to reinforce that front edge, particularly because we're so close to the edge of the paper that if we don't, You might accidentally slip cards in here, or things like that. So we are on our way. So we have our first fold, and now we're just going to kind of fold this up along the lines that they've provided up until we get to our last fold, okay, which is here. And we can verify that by putting our card box kind of right where we had it and making sure that our crease is in the right spot. So in this case, we have a lot of extra material. So we may thin it down just because. Let's see how it goes. So I'm going to fold this. Now I need to fold this backwards. So again, along your creased line, I conveniently had a rip there. And you're going to go kind of all the way down. Okay, in some cases you get lucky and the art will line itself up, so you don't have to worry too much about making sure your folds are straight, because all you need to do is make sure any one area lines up the way it's supposed to. Okay, so now I have this back flappy piece that we need to do something about. So let's just kind of mash it around a little bit and make sure it's going to work. Let's fold this all the way out to our edge. Okay, now depending on the art you chose, you know, the exact way you're going to fold this will vary. But at the end of sort of the first step, what you want is you want your art located here, okay, and all the other material folded up in the back. Okay, how that's folded up, what it looks like, is largely a matter of, you know, just conveniently how you got there. It's not absolutely important that you get it perfect. What you don't really want is you want to avoid having a big bunched up set of folds in the center, because it's going to essentially make a rigid, kind of a ridge in your box. Man, I can't. Anyway, so yeah, ridge in your box. Take that. On we go. So here we are. We're pretty close to where we want to be. We're roughly centered, maybe a little bit. I can afford to use a little bit more, but we're going to take our deck that we already have as just a guide. We're going to put it now on the bottom and just take a look at how close we are to center. We're also going to look for, are there places on the back, essentially that's going to be the inside of the box, where we've got material bunched up that's not going to work for us. So I've got this lined up, and you can see that you can see the deck box that I'm using just as a guide in the back. And now we're going to start setting the guide for our permanent folds. And the other thing that you'll be able to see is, if you look sort of down on it, we're pretty close to having this line up almost exactly right. Now you don't want to make it too tight here, because if you do, it's going to be very difficult to fit the appropriate amount of cards in here. So you want to make sure that you're overlapping by a little bit on the edge of this the sort of model box that you're using. Okay. If you want to, you can even go a little bit thicker, and what that's going to mean is that you either have space for extra cards if your card's more than the standard 60, or you'll have some space, and your cards will just flop around in there a little bit. Okay, so when you take that sort of model out, you're going to see it's starting to leave some pretty good creases. Now you want to crease this all the way down, so the whole piece of paper is going to have this sort of side crease, and you want to be careful because the material will try and bunch up on you here, and you want to just make sure you watch what it's doing, else your lines are not going to be as clean as you might like. Okay. Ultimately, we're not building cars. We're just making a deck box, so I'm not over worried. But again, you just want to do your best if you can while you're folding to keep this from bunching up. So, like I said, I'm new to the game, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm doing the newbie kind of stuff, like, oh, how can I make that kind of, how can I use these instructions for something cool, or how can I learn how to play the game better? And so, like me, if you're like me and you're just learning how to play, you might actually try reading these things as you make the box. Okay, so now we've got the beginning of a pretty solid deck box. All right, so this fits pretty well. Our top edge looks pretty good. So now is a good time to tape down our top edge and make sure it's protected, so that when we try and put cards in it, they don't inadvertently slide into in between the paper. So another piece of tape, and you want to take this tape and you want to make it pretty much as wide as our deck box. So again, I'm using packing tape because I'm just I prefer the kind of sturdier finish that it creates. And so I also want to encourage you, while I'm attempting to tape this, to, if you have a better way to do this, or you've made a deck box from these instructions, post a video, post a reply. We'll link it for sure. We'll put it back. We'll put links to your site on our homepage, all sorts of stuff. We don't want to do this stuff if it's not going to have value. So the only way we can tell if it's working or useful is to hear from you guys that are taking these things and making cool stuff. So as you can see, I inadvertently stuck the back down and it got all bunchy on me. So I'm just trying to get it lined up correctly. And it's pretty close. With any of this stuff, you want to put the finish edge down first and then slide the tape back. Okay, and here we go. And we are pretty good. Now, to do the rest of this is going to get just a little tricky. You have to do a couple folds that you may not have a lot of experience doing. If you do get situations where the material is bunching up on you, try and push that bunched up portion out to the end, and then if you need to, add a crease or refold. What you don't want is this bunched up material inside, because it will essentially interfere with your ability to use the card box effectively. Okay, so if you look, I just bunched this up, so now all I'm doing is essentially carrying that bunched up down out to the edge of the page and adding a recrease. Okay, no big deal. All right, now it's time to fold the next portion. So first, we're just going to do a basic kind of once over fold. We're going to just get our crease guides in. So we're going to put a kind of a crease here, and all you need to do this is just push down on the edge of the box that you're using under it. If you're not using a box, if you're using a deck of cards instead, it's the same deal. You just want to make sure you hold the cards tightly, or else you'll end up bending a couple. So you can still use active cards to do this without actually using a deck box. Okay, you just put the cards in and then pull your edge across. All right, moving along. So we have our first fold, and we've got a good grip that this is kind of how this is going to lay out. Now I work upside down, right side up. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes you'll find that if you look at something that you've been folding kind of one way and you turn it upside down, all of a sudden it'll look different enough that you go, oh wait, let me try this. This is a better way to go about it. So we've got our fold here, and we're going to put a hard crease in that. Now if you have a marker or something like that and you want to go nuts, feel free. You can kind of push down on the edge, and that will give you a nice finished crease. It's not absolutely critical. One of the things you'll notice very quickly, and you'll see it here, is the hard creases that they put in their own material often lead to wearing that's kind of difficult to deal with. So you can go with a hard crease here, but understand that that's going to wear quickly, or you can go with a slightly softer crease and get kind of the same result anyway. So we've got the first fold, okay, and now we're going to put our second one in. All right, and so now we've got a good idea where that one's going to be, and we're going to make that happen. So again, the art that's on here has a convenient kind of line, so we'll just make sure we're folding to that line on both sides, and we'll push that down. Okay, so now you should see something like this. All right. Now here's where this gets interesting, fun, hard, whatever. So you're going to put your block or whatever you're using. And again, you really don't need this. I find it convenient to use it. You can use a regular deck of playing cards. It's not going to matter. And what you're going to do is you're going to start folding this over. And what that's going to do is it's going to start to naturally crease in interesting ways. So if you push this down, you'll find that you'll create this, this peak here, and that's normal. And then when you go this way, if you've wrapped presents before, you can probably relate to how this works. You can then, if you want, fold this in and then fold another one over. Okay, but I think that looks kind of heinous, ever so slightly, completely horrible. So what I do instead is I reverse it. So when I reverse it, I take the folds that I made when tucking that side in, and then I make them essentially backwards. Okay, so this one is kind of an inside fold, as you can see. And all I did, again, was take how I was folding it up and reverse that. I pushed it inside. Okay, so you're going to do these in order, one at a time. So you're going to make this fold. Okay, and then when you pull this up, what you're going to do, this is where this gets a little challenging to demonstrate. But what you're going to do is you're going to pull this side in. Okay, I'm trying to look here on the camera, and it's going to want to bend a little triangle in here. I don't know if you can see that. Okay. What you need to do is you need to squash that triangle flat. It's called a squash fold, surprisingly enough. And when you do that, it will make a reasonably nice corner down there in the bottom. And you can see that, hopefully, that there's just a tiny triangle, and all essentially what you've done is you've folded that triangle that you originally made right in half. Okay, and then you take your trusty dry erase marker that you can use with our tokens, and you just push that corner down with it, and you now have a reasonably flat corner. And the cool thing about it is once the cards are in there, that's going to be kind of just right. You'll notice it did bump up the regular sort of blank that I'm using, and that's okay. We're not worried too much about the reveal here right now, particularly because the art here isn't awful. If the art here were a completely different color or looked horrible, we would want to try and minimize how much of this fold over we see. And you can see here that when you put a card in, it should go a little bit lower than the edge. If not, you just push. Okay, and this edge will cover it. Okay, so moving right back to where we were. I don't know if this one's going to make that guy come up. And if you did this, if you wanted to see how this really works on the inside, we can show you how it works on the outside. So you fold this over, okay, and now you fold this over, and you want this to be flat. So what you can see is happening here is that you make this tiny triangle. Well, essentially we're doing the exact same thing, but on the inside. So we're going to unfold it, okay. We're going to take our blank out. We're going to push this down. You want to push this side in first, okay, and you're going to get your triangle here. So we got this, Okay, and that, you can see that makes a clean edge on the bottom here. All right, and then we're going to fold this up, and that's going to start essentially remake that fold inside for that tiny triangle. And we're going to push it down with our pen or our fingers, and if you look down in there, you're going to see 2 tiny triangle folds. Awesome. So now we can take our tape and fold and cement these. Okay, now I don't know how you guys are with arts and crafts, but this kind of stuff actually worked out pretty well. I'm teaching my son how to play at the same time I'm learning how to play, and he is, you know, trying to save instructions for me now. He's looking at the instructions, and listen, you know, looking at the instructions at his age, he's 9, is just looking at them is an achievement. So he's, you know, eyeballing it and saying, oh man, that would make a really cool card box. You know. Okay, so I got the sides taped, and now we have the beginning of a pretty solid deck box. And the corners are firm, they're sharp enough, they will fit cards in it. I'll just take some and throw them in. Okay, the cards are safely kind of underneath the front edge, so they're not going to get folded accidentally. Now, one of the things that you could have done is taken a couple of extra cards and put them inside here for reinforcement. I don't know if it's important as much to reinforce the front as it is to reinforce the back. What I need to do is put you know, some cards that I'm not going to use down the back side of this and slide them kind of all the way down. And what they'll do is they'll act as kind of a stiffening agent for the back of the deck box so that it doesn't, you know, flop around. You can do that, you cannot do that. It really, again, it's just a matter of, you know, preference, personal preference, really. So, with that, what I'm going to do is create the top. So, easy thing, the top. First, we're going to cut the flaps on the sides. This is where you're going to have a fold-over piece to keep the cards from sort of putting pressure on the top. So I'll show you what that looks like. So we're going to cut, you know, pretty evenly along the side and then along the back here. So you can see that. And you want to be careful not to cut too far, because obviously you don't want to cut into the sides of the back of the box. Okay, so now we've got a flap here, and we've got one on the other side. Let's just cut that out. Okay, and you just want to fold that down. Now you can, if you have it, you can take some tape and keep these things together, because you'll notice there are multiple pieces of paper. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but we'll take some tape nonetheless and just hold these edges together. Now, obviously, since you're putting magic cards in these things, and you know, for most people, those cards are precious, you're going to want to make sure that you don't have, you know, obviously you don't have cards in the inside while you're making it, because you don't want to accidentally cut them, and you don't want to have a lot of adhesive tape sort of edges floating about. So you trim them off as you get there. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is along the front side of these flaps here, you want to trim those back. So just take a cut at an angle and cut those back. And what that's going to do is when we decide to put the flap over, when the flap goes in, it's not going to fight for space. Okay, so we have our flaps taken care of. Nice. We've got the top part to make now. So you'll find out that you're obviously a little long at this point. That's okay. We'll cut that off. But something you can do here is start to look around for maybe something that might be of visual interest for your front flap. You're not forced to go with just this because it's on the outside, particularly when you have multiple layers here underneath. So you might be able to get away with some other art. If you look around through these layers, that would work. For now, I'm not seeing anything that's quite right or overly attractive, so I'm just going to cut it probably here, right around where these cards come in. And that'll give us probably just a little bit too much actually to tuck in, but that's okay. So some other things that you can do with this also, instead of making it tuck in like some of the other boxes that I have, is you could put refrigerator magnets like you get from, you know, like a old baseball schedule or something like that, and you can put those magnets in this part and this part, and then this will close magnetically. So there's just a lot of options that you can have when it gets to it. But for now, we'll just cut this. So we're going to make sure that these stay folded down, and we're going to cut it straight across. And again, we'll just pick a good spot. So maybe right at the edge of these cards. You're going to want to cut yours just a little bit straighter than that, because you're not retarded like me. But scissors were never my high point in arts and crafts. Alright, so now we take that, we want to be sure to tape these flaps down because they're not, you know, not really going to help us if they're sticking up. And we're going to put a piece of tape over the front edge, and that'll give us a sealed kind of look to the front. You know, again, with all this sort of thick, heavy packing tape, you can be a little bit generous with it, and all it's going to do is help make sure that this thing stays together. A situation where you over tape or what have you, you can just cut it off. And then I'm going to put a nice tape across here for the front edge. Again, you know, feel free to go a little long with your tape, just so that you can you know, make sure that you get it all the way covered, because you can always cut the tape off. And then, you know, you're just going to give it a couple quick folds just to make sure, like this front edge here needs a good fold just to make sure that the piece is going to crease in the right spot consistently. If you want, you can take a marker to that, or not. It's kind of up to you. And then you just do a couple, you know, quick practice before you put cards in it. You want to get to see how this feels once it goes in, once it tucks in there, because it might be a little bit long. I think this one that I just made is a little bit long. See, and you're going to find out it's a little long when it takes a lot of prying to get it back out, or a lot of sort of bending it and folding it to push it in all the way. The other thing you can do is you can taper the front edge of this a little bit, like so, to make that go a little bit smoother when it comes to putting the flap in. you know, again, the sort of magnetic, a magnetic one would mean that you could have a flap that goes all the way down to the end here. You know, play with it. This is sort of more of a design concept than it is anything's fixed. And because these instructions are, you know, come for free with a pack, it's really not a big deal. And you can see, you know, that kind of looks pretty good. It lines up nice. It's got kind of a good, almost feels like a little case. You know, you've got the stuff in the back, the art from the other characters and stuff like that, but you're going to have that depending on which one you use. So again, since we're kind of doing some found art with this, it's not going to be sort of perfect every time how it lays out. I'll show you some other boxes I've made just to give you kind of a perspective on where this could lead you. And then again, if you've got improvements on the concept, or if you've made boxes that you think are pretty cool, go, you know, put a picture up on our Facebook page, or respond to this with a video of how you made it, and we'll repost it. This will definitely hold cards, and it should do a pretty good job. So let me just grab some and put them in so you can see what it looks like, kind of when it's in use. Obviously, this isn't limited to Magic, although I mean certainly that's what we're talking about today. This could work for any of the card games that you might get these large instruction sheets for that have cool art. You know, it's probably not going to be all that exciting for, you know, you're not going to make this for your regular deck of playing cards probably. But solid, consistent, and you got cool art. So here's some other ones I've made. This is one that used the playing card kind of just on the one side. The other side's boring and kind of uninteresting, but kind of a cool look at, you know, just seeing the card that they try and teach you with on the one side. And then I have a couple that are made from some Chandra art. This one got stuck with Chandra on the back because of where it was laid out. And you can see this one's got that tapered tab. It's also a little bit shorter, and it'll hold. This one's designed to hold a little bit more than 60 cards. It's going to have a little bit more sort of heft to it. This is one of the earlier boxes I've made, so it's not really well reinforced, and I don't have a lot of cards in it now, so it's not. It doesn't, you know, it's, you can compress it a little bit. This is another one. This is made with the blue section on, I guess, one of the deck builder instructions. I guess you can tell I like making blue decks, but yeah. So this is kind of how that goes. And then this one is essentially, I just made a sort of a deck sleeve with this. This isn't doesn't have sides or a flap. So I'll teach you guys how to make this in another version. It's kind of cool because you have the art all the way around. And, you know, for just sort of putting a quick deck aside so you can play it, you know, on Friday Night Magic or whatever, it's kind of a cool thing. You know, you're not, in this case, I'm not obviously worried about getting a lot of damage to the edges. This is just for keeping cards aside for me to play with, you know, on Friday night. So that's kind of it. Like I said, I'd love to see what you guys can do with the idea, and share what you've learned. Thanks.